All right, you're in the right place if you're trying to get recipes featured as rich snippets by Google. And I've got an example here of a client, Lelita. She's got this creamy chipotle sauce recipe that I found on her site. And this is the way it appears on Google. This is slightly outdated because there's calories that now show up as well. So you have the cook time, the number of votes that the recipe got, the rating, and description, title, and so on. So that's one of your goals today. It's probably why you're here, trying to get the most out of your recipes because they take a long time to develop, and especially in your case where you're writing a book around them, which is pretty cool. You're trying to increase the number of visitors coming to your website, and who isn't, right? You're trying to get higher on Google and trying to run a successful business with your publishing in your case. So let's get started. This is using recipes to attract visitors and increase traffic through search engine optimization. So you work so hard to create your recipes, and this is a little, not my first silly little comic here. So it's the loser's guide to food blogging. The lady says, all this food blogging has caused you to neglect your children. The guy says, what children? So yeah, there's all these things take time, as you well are aware of, and it's best to take advantage of this. And since you've already done the work, now it's a matter of publishing it out there and getting the word out there, whether it be Pinterest, other recipe sharing websites, Google, and so on, whatever might come up in the future. So before we start, I'll let you know that in the end, you will get a link to these slides, and you'll be able to use them however you please. Yeah, so I'll send you a PDF. A bit about me. I was born and raised in Kosovo, and then at about the age of 13, war broke out, and then we came to Canada as refugees with my family. So here we are, but number of years later, 18 years later, something like that. And yeah, Canada is my new homeland, and there's snow on the ground. There was snow on the ground for a couple weeks ago. But I know you're in Denver as well, so that's not unusual. Today is a really nice day, so it was a nice walk. So a bit about me. When I came to Canada, I got introduced to computers, and as soon as I saw one, I was like, what is that thing? I want it. And we didn't have a computer at home, so I would go to the public library and would use a computer even though I really didn't know what I was doing. I know sending my first email was like a huge achievement because I didn't know what all this meant. And I remember the librarian set me up with a Hotmail account. I was like, ooh, finally I can email people. It was quite a milestone for me. And then I started developing websites and using these tools that were pretty nice. And they would take so long to load though sometimes because the library would be closing and I'd be like, oh no, please wait, I have to save my website. And it would take like 15 minutes for my website to save until like everything loaded. It was like crazy. Good times though, good times. I have fond memories about those times. And then university started, and then I started doing my computer science, which may be related to me losing my hair. Yeah, so there could be a link there. And that's when I started dabbling with business. Actually, the first business that I tried to start was in high school, and I kept fussing with the design of the page for so long that I really never launched it. It was like this thing that I kept working on at lunchtime, moving this thing here, moving this element here, taking this title and so on. This perfectionist nature just never allowed me to start the business because I was obsessing over every little detail. And then, so this was my first attempt, if you will, at business. Then later on in university, I started this textbooks exchange business for university students to exchange textbooks with one another and sell to and buy from each other. That was called Gizmo Books. And that went kind of well. I even won a business competition, business plan competition with it. But really, the business didn't end up going anywhere, and it kind of failed. Then I would read news and be like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. I should copy that and try and build a business around a specific concept or something that I saw out there. And like I tried three different attempts, and they all kind of failed. Then I wanted to start a business building websites for real. And this time I actually got a couple clients. But at the end of the day, it just wasn't happening. And then after all these failures, after all these defeats, something really interesting happened. I ended up creating this weird little to-do list app and actually ended up selling it for like $1,000. I was like, yes, that's my first foray into actually making this thing work. So the persistence started paying off a little bit. My first $1,000 in the pocket, I was like pretty happy. After that, I was thinking about what to do. And I remember I used to go to this website, this specific website, to read tech news and stuff. And I created an email newsletter that would send out these articles to people that were interested, just like myself. And after, I don't know how long I ran it for, maybe a couple of years, which I was making like maybe $100 a month from it, which was good in itself. I ended up selling it for $2,500, which was like, yes. So as you can see, this is starting to look like a hockey stick growth. Ooh, not really, but I like to think so. And then after I sold my newsletter business, I created Zip Recipes. And the way this came about to be was I started emailing different type of bloggers, actually, and doing research about what they needed. I had this concept of creating some sort of a list for websites. And then I started emailing food bloggers, and they're like, yeah, we need that. It's called a recipe card. And this is how Zip Recipes came about to be. And here we are. So in this little webinar, what I want to talk to you about is how, and give you a little bit of an insight into how Google thinks and how that can be used to our advantage as website publishers and essentially people trying to get traffic to their websites, get more visitors, more clicks, and at the end of the day, sell more products. Because otherwise, you know, if you have a website that people can't do anything once they come there, then it's kind of a waste. So Google, one thing that you should know, you probably already know actually, is that Google is very secretive about their algorithms that they use to rank websites higher or lower. Having said that, once in a while, they do tell us something, and that's when we really want to pay attention. I'm just going to make sure I can see if you have any questions here. I'm just going to open my chat window. If you have any questions, just type them in, and I'll take a detour and help you sort everything out. Okay. Cool. Oops. Okay, so Google is a robot. Like, you got to imagine, like, beep, boop, 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 boop. And they don't really think like humans because they're programmed and they're not people. So they like this structured data. Imagine kind of like you have to chew the data for them and tell it like, okay, this part, this is what it means. This part is this, and so on and so forth. So the robot, the Google bots, can't really tell whether a website has cat pictures or it has recipes or it has a novel. They just cannot tell unless you tell it. And the way you tell it is using this structured data. Often it's called, yeah, it's one of the ways to do it is structured data. There's other different ways, but structured data is probably the best one. You can tell Google what stuff on a web page means using these HTML codes, which is actually what a web page is really made out of. The reason you don't see that is because WordPress makes it easy, and Zip Recipes adds these detailed HTML codes on the recipe card itself, so you don't have to worry about it. But if you wanted to see a whole list of them, a whole shebang, you could go to schema.org/recipe, and then it'll tell you like all types of structured data tags that you can add to your information to tell Google that this is this or this is that. Now, like I said, Google, obviously Zip Recipes does this for you under the hood, so you don't have to worry about it. And that's where the power of Zip Recipes when it comes to SEO comes in. And this is available on your free versions as well as the premium versions alike, depending on the different features that you have available. So in order to rank high, Google tells us that we must have four things on a recipe. That's recipe title, recipe image, ingredients, and instructions. These are pretty obvious things, right? But sometimes people like want to leave the title out because they're like, oh, I already have a title higher on the page or something. But you should add a recipe card title as well. Likewise for recipe image. ingredients, and instructions. Now for recipe image, we're making a slight change where if you set a post, an image on your WordPress post in the featured image section, there's a section at the bottom. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let me know and I'll explain later. Where you can set that, and we will start picking up those images so you don't have to set it twice, if you will. So that'll be an improvement that's coming up any day here. These are the four must-haves in your recipe. Now, the 6 elements that are recommended by Google, and like I said, remember when Google says something, we listen. Yeah, cool, awesome. I like that you're really coming along quickly, Karen. That's really good. Okay, so yeah, 6 elements that are recommended by Google that we want to pay attention to are recipe ratings. This is the number of stars that a recipe receives by the public. So your visitors come and they can click on a rating to rate the recipe, 5 stars, 4 stars, and so on. Author name, so who created this recipe. Cook time, prep time, description is also recommended, and nutrition, in particular calories. Now, this slide is a little bit, actually, I think it's this next slide. So this slide, this little picture is a little bit outdated here. And like I said, I had this point here that said that Google is going to start adding these things on the recipe card itself or on the rich snippet here. And they started just adding, recently they started adding the calories. So my point to say is that when Google recommends something like nutrition, calories, they probably will start adding it to the recipe card at some point, or to the rich snippet in here. So you want to pay attention when Google recommends something. And these are the 6 elements that are recommended again. And calories is missing from here. So just to go over everything again, we have the title here, that's the recipe title, the ratings. So in this case, we have 4.5 stars rating, and then 493 votes, or 430, a little bit of dyslexia going on there, 439 votes that came for this recipe, and 5 minutes to cook. And then we have here the description and obviously image. Like I said, Google may start changing this, and they are constantly playing with different things to make people more attracted to your recipes. So when you take their consideration seriously, you will benefit in the future just by doing things that they recommend. So you want to start off on the right foot. Other signals to consider that Google considers for search engine ranking to rank you higher are website speed. So consider your host company, and you could do things like type in Google like your host company name. Let's say it's Bluehost, and then speed comparison to figure out whether it's one of the faster hosts or whether you should switch to something else. There's also websites that can monitor speed for you of the website and see how fast it's loading. So website speed is very important, because at the end of the day, Google is trying to make the websites easier for people to use. And the faster the websites load, the more people are going to stay on the website, and they're not going to leave and abandon the website because it's taking too slow to load. The other factor is domain age. So this means that when does your domain expire? So if you set your domain to expire a year from now, so you renew the domain. So the domain is www.whatever the domain is .com. If you set your domain to expire a year from now versus 5 years from now, Google will take the latter, meaning the 5 years, as a stronger signal that you're going to stick around, and this is not a fly-by-night operation that you're running and you're trying to scam somebody out of something. So that's one factor. The domain name itself. Now, if a visitor is looking for bread recipes and you happen to have breadrecipes.com, that's excellent. You'll do well. Obviously, if you provide bread recipes and not cat pictures in that website. So that's another factor. So you want to, sometimes people actually will do, like I remember my cousin was running a roofing company in a small city here in Alberta, Canada. And instead of calling his website like Integrity Roofing, we ended up calling the website like roofinglethbridge.ca. And that ended up working quite well for him because it had the keyword that people were searching for. that is roofing, and the word Lethbridge for the city name. So that worked out well. You might want to get a different domain name just so that you get a higher Google ranking. So that's something to consider. How many people link to your website? Now, this is Google's initial innovation that they made in the search engine land back in the 1999, 2000, where they introduced their page rank algorithm. And what was different about this is that instead of trusting you that what is on the site, what you're telling people that is on the site is actually on the site, they would start ranking people they would start ranking pages based on who is linking to you. So if you have a page about cats and everybody, like 10,000 websites are linking to you, then you're going to do really well on Google once people search for cats, because a lot of people are linking to the website and essentially voting for your page for that specific category, for that specific term. Now, another factor in terms of who is linking to you, the number of people count, and also the authority of the sites that are linking to you. So if the New York Post, New York Times, large websites link to you that have a large authority associated with them, then you're going to do better. So what I'm trying to say is that you should share your recipes far and wide and not worry about like things like, oh, I should keep my recipes on the website, as long as you get people to link back to your website, right? So if you can share your recipes with other people, you could become a guest blog poster for different blogs. Definitely take advantage of that, and that will help you at the end of the day. Some more factors loved by Google. This is becoming more popular every day, and this is the website security. Now, you will notice on your domain name, if you click on the URL at the top of the browser, some sites will say http://, some sites will say HTTPS. The S here stands for secure, and that's the one you want to be at. You can buy a security certificate from your website host and set that up quite easily nowadays. So this is starting to have more and more weight in Google, because they want the web, the internet, to be more secure for people at the end of the day. The other important factor is the URL of your recipe. So here we have two different examples. We have lalita.com/recipes/creamy chipotle sauce versus lalita.com/post-id1245. Okay, now one of these is obviously better than the other, and that's the top one, because the top one tells you that there's a recipe called chipotle, creamy chipotle sauce in this specific link, and the bottom one tells Google nothing, because 1245 means nothing to you as a human, and it doesn't mean anything to Google either, because they can't make sense of that. So it's nice to have a descriptive URL in the name of the URL, as well as the domain name. So always remember that Google wants people to use the internet. That's how they make money at the end of the day. And that the better the people find your website, the better Google is going to rank it eventually. Even if they don't do so right now, they always are trying to become more and more human, if you will, where they try to rank your website based on what people think. So keep that in mind. When you make things easier for people, you're going to benefit from Google at the end of the day. So always serve your readers, and Google will follow. The last thing to take into account is how long people stay on your website. Now, if you have a website and the people, let's say the bread recipes, for example, people search for bread recipes and you somehow manage to get to the top, and they click on your link, and instead of seeing bread recipes, they see cat pictures. They're going to go right back to Google, and that's called bouncing. So they're going to bounce really quickly from your website. So boom, go right out to Google, and Google is going to start ranking you lower and lower, because Google thought that your website was about bread recipes, but in reality, people looking for bread recipes go to your website and come right back, meaning they didn't find what they were promised, so Google will start ranking you lower. So the amount of time people spend on your website is very important, which is why it's nice to have for example, to encourage people to stay longer on your website, to have a recipe index or like a grid of your recipes that you have available so people can explore and stay longer on your website and rank higher as a result. So now I'm gonna demo to you zip recipes, and you should already be familiar with this stuff, but in case you have any questions, or I'm just gonna go through the fields that I mentioned and make sure that you can take this information and apply it. So let me share my browser. And if you have any questions, just type them in. Sorry, just setting this up. Was that no questions? I'm learning a lot. Oh, excellent. Good information. Just wanted to make sure. So for these demos, I try to have a fresh WordPress installation every single time so that it's not like, oh, here I set this up before and magically stuff is going to happen for you. Trying to avoid that. So give me a second. Okay. So here now you should see my browser. Okay, and now I'm in the admin section of my website. I'm going to upload my Zip Recipes Lover plugin. That's the premium top plugin that has all the features, and we're constantly developing new ones to help you sell products and different things based on user feedback as well. So just going to install that quickly. And that's as simple as like dragging and dropping a file onto the website here. And once it installs, we go activate plugin. And there's one thing that is going to catch me if I don't do right now. The automatic nutrition feature is really cool, and I will show you that in a second. It just requires this tiny little registration step that I'm going to complete now before I get started. So you just set password, username, and then email address. That's registering the feature. And that's all. Okay, I think we're good to go now. So, okay, so now we have Zip Recipes set up and installed. I'm going to go ahead and create a new recipe. Now, I have a recipe that I have borrowed from Tupperware. They're one of the clients. So it's a roasted fennel with rosemary and Parmesan. And all I'm doing is, you will not see my editor, but essentially I'm copying and pasting here. So I copy the title, click on the Zip Recipes button, and it automatically fills the title, so you can leave that alone. And I add an image here. Very straightforward here. I know the adding other images is a little bit more involved, but we are working on that to make it much easier. So rest assured. Okay, so I added that image, selected, and that's image. We have the author field. Like I said, Google recommends that you add an author field. This can be changed in settings, and you can go in the settings and change the recipe field or the author field for all the recipes. So I forgot to set author right now, and there's nothing in here. But we can change that. I'll show you in a second. And we'll add the ingredients. We'll add the instructions. Copy paste again. That's that. It's looking so far so good. Let's say this yields 4 servings. Okay, and then now we can click more options here, and we will see the. Let's say this is an entree. I'm not sure if that's true. Let's say it's French cuisine, and then we have a description here we can put. This was the other recommended field description. Prep time and cook time. So we have 30 minutes and let's say 20 minutes for cook time. And then we have some notes here that we can use. Now, remember I said calories has started showing up on the little rich snippets information that I was, that didn't used to show up. So you can add carbs, calories, protein, fiber, sugar, all this information. You can go to the USDA website where you can search these different ingredients, figure out how much you have, and calculate what those numbers are going to look like. Essentially, you probably need an Excel spreadsheet to do it and make sure you have the numbers right. However, if you notice, I'm using my zip recipes lever package, and all I have to do to get that information is click calculate nutrition, and then we do magic wizardry. It says nutrition data has been calculated and the nutrition label is attached. I love that feature. And now we go down here. We have all this information filled out for us. And I think that's super brilliant. And in addition, we have the recipe label that's added as well. And we will see that as soon as it's published. Just got to move these windows around a bit so I can see my screen. Okay, so that's the recipe that's added. Now I'm going to publish it. And here we can click the permalink and right click, go open a new tab. And oops. Open a new tab. And here we have the roasted fennel with rosemary and Parmesan. And the visitor can now rate this recipe and have the yield, they have nutrition data and ingredient instructions. And as I showed, the nutrition facts label has been automatically generated for you only using these ingredients. And you had zero manual work to do, which is really cool. In my opinion, anyways. Okay, so that's essentially covers the fields that we need to do. The author field can be set. So if you notice here, there's no author. Author field is not set at all. So what we will do is we will add the author field. We'll go to zip recipe settings, and we can create a default author that all the older recipes that didn't have one. Actually, let's just call this Tupperware. And when we select this author, this will become the, so select the default author, that will become the default author that the old recipes will be set to. We'll go back to that other window, refresh the page, and then here we see author has been automatically added, and it's Tupperware. So that's pretty sweet. Now, in terms of the other feature that I want to show you is their Save Recipes button. Now we have the Yumly, which is a recipe community kind of like Pinterest. We have Big Oven, Pinterest, and we will save these buttons and they will show up on top of the recipe card. And now people can come to your website, see the recipe, click Save to Big Oven, and they have this recipe saved in addition to a link to your website. Likewise with Yumly, likewise with Pinterest. Okay, that covers that. Now we covered the automatic nutrition. Let's talk about recipe index. Now a user can come and create a recipe index here, and essentially it's really straightforward. We'll call this recipe index, we'll just say it's alpha or alphabetical, and we can group it in two ways. That's where the name comes from. We can group the recipe using the first letter from the recipe name or the recipe category. I'll show you both. So we'll save this one first. And it generates a little shortcode. WordPress has these all over the place, and they're essentially a little magical incantation, if you will, of text that when you add it to a page or a post, it expands into this thing, whatever is intended to be by the plugin author or the theme. And now we will go to a page. We can call this recipe index by alphabet. And then here you can say like, hey guys, the reason why I'm typing this is to show you that anything can be done here. This, some recipes, yada. And then we go new line, we paste it, and that's all we have to do. We will publish it. And then we can go and look at this page. That's the recipe we had. And now the page above it, it has a little blurb. And then below it, it has this recipe index. So we have R for roasted fennel. Now, if you had other recipes in here, they would show up as normal. They would show up under their respective letters. That's the recipe index using alphabet sorting. Now we can go and create a different one. Let's go create a recipe grid. So this one is very similar to the index, except it shows the recipes in a 4-column grid that go down, and they can be categorized using the alphabet or the recipe category. So let's call it this grid with category. We will save it and also copy shortcode, create a new page. And mind you, these pages can actually be linked to the menu here. Where's the menu? I don't think. But there would be a menu up here on the website if you created one. Depending on your theme, it may look different. But you can add the links to these different pages that we're creating, like we're doing right now. So we can create grid by category. We'll paste the shortcode that we just got. And then publish. And then we'll click this to get to that recipe. So check this out. I always make this mistake. So it says uncategorized. So what we'll do here, we'll go to the recipe and we'll click edit post, and we'll add a category down here. So the default category is uncategorized, and we'll just say this is lunch. Add new category. And if you have multiple categories, they will all appear. And we will remove that uncategorized. And this is obviously, as you know, the featured image that we're going to fix up or improve here very quickly so that you don't have to set an image for both of them. There we go. That's updated. And now we should see this change to lunch instead of uncategorized. And they will show up 4 columns here, and with a more button if you have more than 4 recipes per category. And the user can be engaged with your website more so in this matter. Okay, that covers that. Now, what else do we have here? Just get a hint. Okay, so we have I showed you the recipe ratings. The custom templates essentially give you a different look and feel for the recipe card. So you get 5 of those premium templates in the premium version. Authors we covered, recipe grid we covered, automatic nutrition we covered, import is not really relevant. Recipe search will actually allow you to, will allow your visitors to search on your website for ingredient items. So you can go to Stage Blog and then click search here. And for example, search for flannel and it'll show up. But now that shows up. But in this case, let's search for something like garlic as an ingredient. Search for garlic and that should still show up. There you go. So it's kind of nice. Your visitors can search by ingredients. And recipe actions, those are the buttons that allow you to save the recipe to Pinterest, Yumly, or Big Oven. Okay, that covers that. Now, let's talk about speed, because your speed of the website is very important. One plugin that you should always have on your website is a caching plugin. So you'll go to plugins, add new, and you'll want to add, it's usually right in the featured plugins theme. Oh, right, WP Super Cache. This will make your website faster, and essentially, instead of just to kind of give you a brief description, when you load the website every single time, it has to go to the database, and that process going to the database takes longer. And what the caching will do is will kind of save some of the information up front so that it doesn't have to go to the database every time and speed up your website. So to install the WP Super Cache, we just, it's a really simple setup. You go install and then activate. And then once it's activated, it'll give us this warning, which we can ignore the first time. It's only for the first subsequent uses. If you see that it's not good. And initially it'll be disabled, so we can go to the plugins admin page and enable the caching. So it'll be in settings, WP Super Cache. We'll turn that on, update status. And really, that's all you have to do. Sometimes this will kind of get you. It's a little bit of a caveat. You have to go and either delete the cache or turn it off temporarily if you make a change on your website and you don't see it for whatever reason, and you really think it should be there, the changes that you made. So you can just turn off the caching, because sometimes it can be overly aggressive and it'll keep old information when you because it doesn't know it's been updated by you. So keep that in mind. If something starts appearing off and changes aren't displaying properly, turn off caching temporarily to sort that issue out. The other issue that I mentioned was a URL name. So for this recipe, we have the roasted fennel, that's the title. And if you look at the URL up here, you see that this is my blog name, and this is the date, and this is the actual name of the recipe. So it's showing up well. That's how we want it. Now, by default, WordPress has this setting where it actually doesn't show it like that at all. We can go to settings, permalinks, to change that. So the default setting on WordPress for some reason is set to plain, so which makes your website title be the random number that I mentioned earlier. So instead of it being rosemary fennel, it'll be like p is equal to 1 to whatever, and that's some sort of an ID for the post, which is not helpful to humans. WordPress doesn't care, but it's not helpful to humans and Google. So the ones that you want to set are day and name, for example. This includes your the date of the publishing and the name of the post that you're actually publishing, in this case, the recipe. Or if you just want to do month and name, you can do that. Or the one that I kind of like is that you remove date completely from the URL and just have the actual name and the blog name. So that's the changes where you can make for the permalinks. So we covered speed, we covered the I think that's pretty much gives us a good coverage and good basis in terms of the demo. Okay. So let's switch back to the slides here. Give me a second. Okay. Any questions so far with regards to the demo before I move on? Oh, yeah, cool. I'm glad you like this, Karen. Yeah, it took me a long time to develop that feature, and it took special attention because a lot of people uh, a lot of software developers like to give you all these different things that you need to set and so on in terms of configuration and stuff. But I like the fact that it's like a single button and it gives you this magical power to get the nutrition data. So the demo's done. I'm not sure what you showed up today, but I have a sneaking suspicion that you don't want to waste your time with your publishing your recipes and get no traffic in return, right? Because as the saying goes, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one to hear, it doesn't make sound. Well, for a website, if you publish it and nobody's visiting, then it really doesn't make a sound and you're wasting your time. So ideally, it would be nice to get more traffic. It would be nice to save time by getting automatic nutrition and these different features that we make really easy to publish recipes with. And it would be nice to make more money from your website, from your books in this case, and have your recipes look really nice on Google and have people click over and discover your product in the process. And Zip Recipes has got all this information, all these tools for you to make your life easier. And even we're going to be including more tools in the future to allow product sales. So one of the things that I've considered is actually, for example, in your case, it would be like in between the ingredients and instructions, you could feature a book, for example, that specific book that's included in this recipe, for example, or that are related, a book that's related to the recipe, or even other products if you venture into other products later on, where they would show up in the middle of the recipe and engage with a user, with a reader right away, and they can purchase it through Amazon. Or if you decide to have an e-commerce shopping cart on your website later on, that would work as well. But all these features essentially are coming up, and they're being cooked right now, really simply put. And the idea is to save you more time when you got no time to spare. So, like I said, with the Deliver package, you'll get the ability to allow your readers to interact with recipes, allow your readers to save recipes on Yumly, Pinterest, Big Oven, and get those people to come back on your website through this sharing, if you will, this virality. Create recipe index, create the recipe beautiful image gallery with a grid, automatically add nutrition, set the author, and all of these features, and more coming up every single week, really. And what people have said about the automatic nutrition and the Zip recipes in general is that it's really awesome. I absolutely love the design. I love the plugin, so easy to use and clean. And I love it because that's music to my ears. Yeah, I think that's the end of the presentation. If you wanted to upgrade Karen, the way you do it is you go to ziprecipes.net, plans and prices, and then you can choose a monthly or yearly plan we have. If you choose the yearly, we have 15% off. The monthly plan works to like $14.77, I think, at this point in time. That's the presentation. Any questions? The yearly fee is $149 for the Lover package, and which works out to, if you total it up, it'll be 15% less than if you pay monthly. But some people can do monthly, and that's totally fine by me. And you get benefits, and you don't have to pay $149 upfront. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate you being here.